San Juan del Sur, Nicaragua, March 19th, 1988. The bay sits calm. Beach house lights flicker on. Colonel Rafael Ortega flips fish on a grill while his family laughs behind him. But 580 meters offshore, a 52-foot sport fishing yacht, flying a Panamanian flag, isn't fishing at all. Inside the cabin, two men stare through glass that turns dusk into daylight, waiting for a single, clean silhouette they've nicknamed Target, Monk. Ortega believes his security is perfect in Managua. He never imagined his routine could be mapped from the sea. One shot later, the tourists disappear toward Costa Rica, and Operation HOOKLINE begins its legend. Rafael Ortega wasn't famous because he gave speeches. He was feared because he erased patterns. Born in Leon in 1947, Ortega came of age during the final years of the Somoza dictatorship, a period when knowing who to trust meant the difference between prison and survival. By age 25, he had already demonstrated the skill that would define his career. Invisibility within visibility. Associates described him as disciplined, never impulsive. He listened more than he spoke. He remembered everything. After the Sandinista Revolution in 1979, Ortega rose inside the newly formed state security apparatus. His role wasn't public. He built a counterintelligence machine designed to survive sabotage, infiltration, and proxy war. In Managua, he allegedly coordinated liaison lanes with Cuban and Soviet advisors while hunting Contra networks the way a surgeon hunts infection, quietly, relentlessly, and without public credit. His defining skill wasn't violence. It was control. Controlling information, controlling movement, controlling who could meet whom without being seen. Intercepted communications from February 1988 reveal Ortega discussing his daughter's upcoming quinceañera. Analysts noted nothing operationally relevant. He asked about flower arrangements. He worried the caterer might run late. When the consequences came 1 month later, his daughter would lose more than a celebration. By early 1988, Ortega had developed one weakness that wasn't ideological. It was personal. Once a month, he left the capital's fortified logic for a private coastal retreat in San Juan del Sur, a place where normal life could briefly exist. Intelligence services had tracked this pattern for 7 months. The predictability was slight but consistent. Third weekend of each month, same beach house, same arrival time on Friday evening. In the world of counterintelligence tradecraft, this kind of rhythm is called a signature. For planners in Langley, it was called an opportunity. By March 1st, 1988, CIA Operations Directorate had concluded Ortega represented a Tier 1 priority target. The authorization to develop direct action options came through the Central America Task Force under restricted handling procedures. The window was 30 days. Central America in early 1988 was a chessboard with too many hands on the pieces. Nicaragua's war bled across borders. The United States and Honduras mobilized forces in response to Sandinista pressure tied to Operation Danto 88, a major Sandinista offensive into Honduras. The American response, Operation Golden Pheasant, deployed over 3,000 troops to Honduras in a show of force that brought the region closer to open interstate war than at any point since 1984. Meanwhile, the broader legal and political backdrop was radioactive. The International Court of Justice had issued a judgment in June 1986 describing United States-linked attacks on Nicaraguan targets, including a specific attack on San Juan del Sur in March 1984, involving harbor mining and infrastructure sabotage. That history mattered because it established the era's governing doctrine: plausible deniability. Operations designed to be executable, useful, and officially unknowable. CIA planners called this the maritime interdiction strategy. The logic was straightforward. Offshore platforms provide access without territorial violation, weapon delivery without traceable logistics, and exfiltration without border crossings. It had been used before. Declassified reporting confirms that CIA-directed maritime operations off Nicaragua involved offshore mothership supervision of raids and attacks throughout the 1980s. Operation HOOKLINE fit the established toolkit. The obstacles were immediate and substantial. Obstacle 1. Ortega's counterintelligence apparatus in Managua made any approach through the capital a guaranteed compromise. Surveillance teams would be identified within hours. Obstacle 2. Political risk. Anything traceable could detonate internationally at a moment when Congress was already investigating covert action in Central America. Obstacle 3. Geography. Getting lethal capability close to a coastal target without looking like an attack required solving the appearance problem. How to position a weapon platform that wouldn't trigger alarm. Despite these challenges, planners identified a vulnerability window. Signals intelligence and pattern of life analysis exposed one predictable element: the monthly coastal weekend. By March 8th, all elements would be in position. But first, the cover story needed to be airtight. During the planning phase, the case officer designated Shepard experienced what headquarters psychologists call operational doubt, the moment when the mission's abstraction confronts its human cost. In a March 4th cable-classified secret no-forn, Shepard wrote, "Subject maintains family presence at target location. Collateral exposure assessed as moderate but unavoidable given timing parameters. Request confirmation of authorization scope." The response came back within 6 hours. Authorization stands. Proceed to execution phase. Minimize observable footprint. In the post-operation assessment, analysts would note that Shepard's concern was logged but did not alter mission parameters. The calculation had already been made. But the mission continued. The human element matters here because it reveals the operation's coldest logic. This wasn't a strike against a military installation. It was a strike against a pattern, the one place Ortega lived like a civilian. The cruelty wasn't in the method. It was in the choice of venue. By March 14th, 1988, the operation entered its execution phase. A sport fishing yacht named the Marlin Dancer departed from a marina in Golfito, Costa Rica. The window was 5 days. The cover story was simple because simple stories travel better. American sport fishermen chasing billfish off the Nicaraguan coast. The yacht was a 52-foot Hatteras convertible, a model common enough in Central American waters to avoid attention but expensive enough to suggest legitimacy. Panamanian flag registration blurred ownership and jurisdiction. The rental agreement listed 2 men, Robert Hutchins and Michael Carr. Both names were operational aliases. Both men were real. The internal designation was Operation HOOKLINE. The 2 shooters rotated under bland call signs designed for radio brevity: Lure and Marlin. Both had special operations backgrounds. Lure had spent 4 years with Naval Special Warfare Development Group before transitioning to Special Activities Division. Marlin came from the Army's intelligence support activity with a specialty in long-range surveillance. The selection criteria weren't just marksmanship. They needed men who could live quietly inside monotony, who could fish badly for 4 days without breaking character. The infrastructure wasn't just a rifle. It was a floating routine. The yacht carried tourist logic: coolers stocked with beer, tackle boxes filled with lures that would never touch water, marine radios tuned to fishing channels, and enough ordinary clutter to make any glance slide away. The critical kit was hidden in plain sight. A Remington Model 700 chambered in .300 Winchester Magnum, selected for reach and reliability at extended range. A Leopold Mark IV scope with variable magnification up to 25 power. A Harris bipod modified for shipboard stability. Subsonic ammunition wasn't an option. Suppression was irrelevant when you're shooting across open water. So the round was a standard 190-grain boat-tail hollow point. The real weapon was patience. The team's surveillance schedule was passive and methodical. 4 days of watching from offshore, turning a family property into a predictable diagram. Each day followed the same pattern. Arrive at anchor position before dawn, deploy fishing lines for appearance, observe through high magnification optics, log all movement, rotate watch every 4 hours to prevent fatigue-induced errors, depart before full darkness to avoid suspicion. Communication was strictly limited. Daily coded check-ins via high-frequency radio using 5-letter groups. No voice traffic. No satellite phone usage that could be direction found. The operational control element. A coordination cell aboard a commercial container ship positioned in international waters 30 nautical miles west. Received situation reports, but issued no guidance. The shooters had autonomy. They also had a deadline, March 20th. After that date, the next monthly window wouldn't open for 4 weeks, and the political window might close entirely. By March 15th, the team had completed initial reconnaissance. The beach house sat on a low bluff overlooking the bay. Single-story construction, red tile roof, large wooden deck facing west toward the water. The approach route from Managua was a 2-lane highway visible from multiple observation points, impossible to interdict without massive exposure. But the deck was different. The deck was 580 meters from the anchorage point. The deck faced open water. The deck had no effective cover from maritime observation. Over the next 72 hours, the pattern of life picture developed. Ortega arrived late Friday afternoon with family. 2 security personnel maintained visible presence, but operated on relaxed protocols. No perimeter patrols, no counter-surveillance sweeps of the bay. The assumption was clear. Threats came from land, not sea. By 1800 hours each evening, household activity moved outside. Ortega himself appeared on the deck between 1815 and 1845, usually near a grill positioned on the north end. The vulnerability window was narrow but consistent. 30 minutes of predictable outdoor exposure in declining light. But complications stacked fast. March 16th, 1988. At 0730 hours, local fishermen noticed the yacht's odd stillness. A small boat approached within 100 meters. Lure engaged in casual conversation in broken Spanish, explaining engine trouble. The fishermen offered assistance. Lure declined politely, said a mechanic was coming from Golfito. The encounter lasted 8 minutes. The fishermen departed satisfied. But the team now understood they were visible and memorable. At 1420 hours, a Nicaraguan patrol boat passed within 500 meters on its standard coastal route. Marlin was on deck with fishing rod in hand. Lure remained below, optics trained on the patrol's movements. The boat slowed. Binoculars came up. For 90 seconds, the entire operation balanced on whether curiosity would escalate to investigation. Then the patrol boat resumed speed and continued north. Total observation time, 4 minutes, close enough to matter. The wind shifted in late afternoon, turning the bay into moving glass. Flat water meant perfect optical conditions. It also meant any gunshot report would carry farther and clearer than planned. The acoustic signature couldn't be eliminated, but distance and angle would make source location difficult. The calculation held. barely. And then the target didn't cooperate. March 17th, Ortega didn't appear on the deck at all. Household activity remained internal. Lights came on at 2000 hours. By 2200 hours, the team understood the pattern had broken. That's when the pressure rises. A deniable team can't force the target outdoors without creating exactly the attention they're trying to avoid. They can only wait, and waiting burns time against the operational deadline. March 18th brought the same result. No external activity, no clear shot opportunity. By 1800 hours, Marlin sent a coded signal to the control element. Window negative, timeline at risk. The response came back 3 hours later. Maintain position. Execute if opportunity develops through March 20. What Ortega didn't know was that the weapon trained on his beach house had already been calibrated for every possible shooting solution. Lure had spent 4 hours mapping wind patterns, calculating bullet drop at 580 meters, and identifying the optimal firing position within the cabin. The rifle was zeroed. The range was confirmed. The shot had been rehearsed in dry fire sequence 24 times. All that remained was the target. March 19th, 1988, 1800 hours. The bay sat quiet. Household lights came on inside the beach house. Marlin was on deck maintaining fishing theater. Lure was below, behind the optic, running through the pre-shot checklist for the 9th time that day. Breathing controlled. Rifle positioned on sandbags inside the cabin doorway to minimize motion. Scope trained on the deck's north end where the grill sat waiting. 1820 hours. Movement through the sliding glass door. A woman, later identified as Ortega's wife, stepped out briefly, then returned inside. False alarm. 1832 hours. The door opened again. This time Ortega emerged, grill utensil in hand. Family voices overlapped somewhere behind him. A security guard shifted position on the south end of the property. Too far to matter, too close to feel safe. Inside the cabin, Lure wasn't aiming at a man. He was aiming at a moment. When the silhouette clears the doorway, when the background simplifies, when the target pauses long enough to stop being a blur. 1835 hours. Ortega moved to the grill, bent slightly, adjusted something, then straightened and turned broadside to the water, a perfect perpendicular angle. Range, 580 meters. Wind, 3 knots from the southeast. Crosshair placed center mass, elevated for bullet drop. The trigger press was gradual. No jerk, no anticipation. Just steady pressure until the rifle decided to fire. The report was sharp but not catastrophic. The round covered the distance in just over 1 second. The impact was instant and precise. Ortega collapsed without sound. The grill utensil clattered against tile. Family voices shifted from casual to confused to panicked in the span of 3 seconds. The security guard ran toward the deck. By the time he reached Ortega's position, the boat was already moving. Elapsed time from shot to anchor raised, 48 seconds. Marlin had the engine running before the echo faded. Lure broke down the rifle, wrapped it in a plastic tarp, and secured it in a below-deck compartment that had been prepared specifically for rapid sanitization. Every surface the weapon touched was wiped. Every piece of brass was accounted for, one casing, collected, and retained. The cabin was returned to tourist normal. Fishing rods visible, coolers open, charts spread on the table. The yacht pointed south at cruising speed, drifting toward the legal fog of international water and the Costa Rican maritime boundary. No emergency maneuvers, no high-speed run. Just a boat that had grown bored with fishing and decided to move on. Within 12 minutes, the Marlin Dancer had crossed into international waters. Within 90 minutes, it had reached Costa Rican territorial sea. By midnight, it was tied up at a private dock in Golfito, where the rental period officially ended. The vulnerability exploited wasn't the deck. It wasn't even the lack of maritime security. It was predictability, the one place Ortega lived like a civilian. The operation succeeded not because CIA penetrated his fortress, but because he briefly stepped outside it. By 1900 hours, local authorities understood that an attack had occurred. By 2000 hours, Nicaraguan military intelligence had coordinated with Interior Ministry investigators. The crime scene was immediately sealed. The bullet's trajectory was calculated based on impact angle and tissue damage. Investigators determined the shot originated from the bay. Naval patrol boats swept the area and found nothing. By midnight, every boat within 50 kilometers was accounted for, except the ones that had already left Nicaraguan waters. The physical evidence was minimal and frustrating. One bullet recovered during autopsy, standard hunting ammunition available throughout Central and South America. No fingerprints, no witnesses who saw the actual shooting. 3 separate fishermen recalled seeing a sport fishing yacht anchored in the bay over multiple days, but descriptions were vague and contradictory. One said the men were American, another said European, the third wasn't sure. The yacht's name, flag, and registration were never conclusively identified. Every lead ended in international jurisdictional dead ends, suggesting a level of sophistication that pointed beyond criminal activity. This was state action. But which state? And through what mechanism? Nicaragua's Interior Ministry issued a formal statement on March 21, 1988, describing the killing as an act of terrorism perpetrated by counter-revolutionary forces backed by foreign intelligence services. The language was careful but clear. The United States government issued a standard denial. No knowledge of any such operation, condolences to the family, encouragement for a thorough investigation. The CIA maintained operational silence, neither confirming nor denying anything. The denials were transparent to anyone familiar with covert action protocols, but transparency wasn't the point. Deniability was. The strategic assessment was immediate and multi-layered. The tactical objective was accomplished. A Tier 1 intelligence coordinator was removed from the operational environment. The intelligence Ortega controlled, liaison networks with Cuban and Soviet advisors, counter-contra infiltration methods, safe house locations, was thrown into temporary chaos. Immediate reshuffles within Sandinista security organs created a 3-week window of degraded capability. Secondary benefits included psychological impact. If someone at Ortega's level could be targeted in a supposedly secure location, then no one in the security apparatus was truly safe. But the costs accumulated slowly and persistently. Relations with Nicaragua, already adversarial, hardened further. Regional allies questioned American commitment to international legal norms. Congressional oversight committees, already sensitized by Iran-Contra revelations, began asking uncomfortable questions about maritime covert action authorities. Within CIA itself, the operation revealed a tradecraft element that later required adaptation. High magnification optics from maritime platforms could be counter-detected by shore-based observation systems. The method worked once. It wouldn't work the same way again. For Ortega's family, the consequences were immediate and permanent. His wife ceased all political activity. His daughter's quinceañera was canceled. The beach house was sold within 6 months. In the cruelest irony, the place intended for safety became the site of maximum vulnerability. The calculation made by operational planners was that short-term disruption of Nicaraguan intelligence coordination outweighed long-term diplomatic and legal costs. Whether this proved correct would become clear over the following 2 years as the Contra War wound down and regional peace processes gained momentum. Some analysts argue the operation accelerated Sandinista paranoia and thus delayed negotiations. Others argue it degraded their capability to resist diplomatic pressure. The truth likely sits in the uncomfortable middle. Both outcomes occurred simultaneously. The historical echo that gives Operation HOOKLINE its documentary power is this. We already know from declassified reporting that CIA-linked maritime operations off Nicaragua involved offshore mothership supervision of raids and attacks throughout the 1980s. The International Court of Justice documented patterns of harbor mining, infrastructure, sabotage, and support for armed incursions, including specific operations near San Juan del Sur. HOOKLINE, whether the exact details are accurate or partially reconstructed from operational patterns, fits the demonstrated toolkit of the era. Legacy question: was this a clean strike? Fewer bullets, less collateral damage, faster disruption of a brutal war machine? Or was it a line-crossing assassination wrapped in weekend normality, turning family space into a battlefield without warning or due process? From one perspective, Ortega was a legitimate military intelligence target in an active conflict zone. Removing him degraded enemy capability and potentially saved lives by shortening the war's duration. From another perspective, he was executed without trial while cooking dinner, targeted specifically because he let his guard down in a place meant for family, using methods designed to evade any form of accountability or legal review. The answer reveals more about your worldview than about Operation HOOKLINE. If you believe intelligence officers in wartime are combatants regardless of location, the operation was justified direct action. If you believe assassination violates fundamental principles even when tactically effective, it was state-sponsored murder hiding behind flags of convenience. What's your take? If you commanded the Maritime Covert Action Cell and had 30 seconds to authorize or abort while the target stood on that deck, knowing removal might save American allied lives, but would also normalize extrajudicial killing, would you call it strategy or murder? Drop your perspective in the comments. If this story made you reconsider where legitimacy ends when deniability begins, hit that like button and share.